Giant eagle lands at man's doorstep. What happened next is not for the faint of heart. When a massive eagle unexpectedly landed on a man's doorstep, it was a sight both breathtaking and unnerving. But what followed was even more astonishing, leaving witnesses stunned and some too shaken to recount the events. Ryan Clark lived in a secluded house nestled at the base of towering mountains, where dense forests met the endless blue sky. After losing his family a few years ago, he sought solace in solitude, finding peace in the embrace of nature. Each morning, he rose with the sun, greeted by the melodies of birds and the gentle rustling of wind through the pines. Ryan's days were filled with simple joys, walking through the forest, fishing in crystal-clear rivers, and gazing at the stars at night. Yet deep within, he carried a profound sorrow, and loneliness often crept in during the quiet of the night. One misty morning, as the treetops lay shrouded in fog, Ryan stepped onto his porch, a steaming cup of coffee warming his hands. The crisp morning air was invigorating, and Ryan savored the tranquil silence. Suddenly, the stillness was shattered by the powerful sound of wings beating the air. Startled, he looked up and froze. A massive eagle had landed right in front of his house. With a wingspan exceeding 2 meters, the bird's golden-brown feathers glistened in the light, and its piercing eyes radiated wisdom and strength. Ryan's heart began to beat faster. He had never seen such a majestic bird up close. Fear and amazement overwhelmed him. He took a step back, not taking his eyes off the eagle. The bird stared directly at him without moving. Its piercing gaze seemed to reach into the depths of his soul. At that moment, Ryan's initial fright was replaced by wonder and curiosity. Looking closely, he noticed that one of the eagle's wings was drooping and looked seriously injured. Dry drops of blood were visible on its feathers. The eagle itself was very exhausted and tired, and it seemed he had barely made it to this place. Compassion completely pushed fear out of Ryan's heart. Ryan stepped closer, gesturing to calm the injured eagle, whose anxious gaze remained fixed on the mountains. Each attempt to flap its injured wing brought pain, accompanied by soft, plaintive cries. Sensing the bird was trying to communicate, Ryan glanced toward the mountains and decided to help. He hurried inside, grabbed a jacket, and packed essentials: first aid kit, water, food, and a flashlight. Feeling a mix of urgency and responsibility, he followed the eagle, which moved slowly, occasionally turning to ensure he was still behind. The path led through a dense forest, where trees stretched high into the sky and sunlight filtered through the leaves in thin beams. The ground was covered with soft moss, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and freshness. However, after a while, walking along the trail became noticeably harder. The journey was arduous as the trail grew narrower and more treacherous. They climbed over fallen trees, skirted ravines, and crossed bubbling streams. Though Ryan's legs ached, he pushed forward, driven by the eagle's determination. The bird, despite its injured wing, pressed on, pausing occasionally to rest with quiet, pained moans that tugged at Ryan's heart. They reached an open meadow with stunning mountain views, but Ryan barely noticed as storm clouds gathered overhead. The ascent grew steeper, with slippery rocks and gusty winds testing his endurance. Several times he slipped on the wet stones, narrowly avoiding the abyss that loomed beside the trail. His heart pounded from fear and tension. But the thought that someone ahead needed help gave him strength. The eagle, despite his injury, continued to move forward stubbornly, setting an example of courage. In one place, the trail was so narrow that Ryan had to press himself against the cold rock, trying not to look down. Below, a river raged, and the roar of its waters heightened the sense of danger. One wrong step could be fatal. Cold sweat trickled down his back, but he mustered all his willpower and continued on. Finally, after several hours of arduous travel, they approached a sheer cliff. The eagle let out a long cry full of anxiety. Ryan looked up and noticed a large nest high on the cliff. Faint chirps came from it. Ryan's heart tightened with pity. He immediately realized that the nest held hungry and freezing chicks who wouldn't survive without help. Ryan knew he had to help. But how could he reach the nest? The cliff was steep and dangerous. He looked around and noticed a narrow path leading upward. It was a risky route, but there was no choice. He began the ascent, clinging to every suitable ledge and protrusion. His hands slipped on the cold rock, and his legs trembled from tension. The wind grew stronger, as if trying to knock him off his feet. At one point, A stone crumbled under his foot, and he lost his balance. His heart stopped as he felt the ground giving way beneath him. But at the last moment, he managed to grab a ledge and regain his footing. His breathing was ragged, and fear filled his eyes. But he couldn't give up. Reaching the nest, Ryan saw 3 small eaglets shivering from cold and hunger. Their faint chirps tore at his heart. They were so helpless that tears welled up in his eyes. He carefully wrapped them in his jacket, trying to warm them. The eyes of one of the chicks met his gaze, and Ryan felt an incredible connection with this tiny creature. The descent was even more dangerous. His feet slipped on the wet rocks, and his hands were numb from the cold. But despite all the difficulties, Ryan safely reached the ground. The eagle watched him, emitting joyful sounds. The bird came closer to its eyes and expressed deep gratitude. Ryan felt warmth in his heart, realizing that his efforts were not in vain. He understood that the injured eagle couldn't care for the chicks until his wing healed. Ryan decided to take them home and care for them until they recovered. Returning to his small house, he set up a warm nest for the chicks near the fireplace. He fed them and cared for them day and night. The eagle was always nearby, watching his every action. Sometimes it made soft sounds that seemed to express gratitude and trust. Days quietly turned into weeks. The wound on the eagle's wing gradually healed thanks to Ryan's care. The chicks grew, becoming stronger and more active. They learned to spread their wings, making their first hesitant attempts to fly. Ryan watched their successes with a smile, feeling pride and joy. In the eaglet's eyes, he saw a desire for life and freedom. One day, when the sun was shining brightly, Ryan took the chicks outside. They cheerfully fluttered their wings, feeling the fresh wind. The eagle watched them with pride. The little eaglets flapped their wings and, to Ryan's surprise, rose several meters into the air. It was their first independent flight. Joy filled his heart. He was amazed to feel like part of their feathered family. But along with joy came the realization that soon they would have to part. The eagle had fully recovered, and his chicks were ready for life in the wild. Ryan felt the bitterness of the upcoming separation, but understood that he had no right to keep them. Their home was the sky and the mountains. The day of farewell arrived. Ryan stood on his doorstep, watching as the eagles and eaglets prepared to fly. The birds came closer. The eagle gently touched his shoulder with its beak, and the eaglets playfully hopped around. At that moment, Ryan felt tears welling up. Ryan knew these moments would stay with him forever. The eagles spread their wings and soared into the sky, circling above the house as if bidding farewell and showing their gratitude. He watched them until they vanished beyond the horizon, surprised to realize that the heavy longing for his past had finally lifted. Loneliness and despair no longer plagued Ryan. He even began writing a book about his extraordinary experiences, rediscovering joy and purpose in the process. The eagle family never forgot their rescuer, occasionally returning to his home, their majestic forms soaring high above the edge of town. Whenever they appeared, Ryan would bring out a large piece of fresh meat, watching with a warm smile as the birds gratefully accepted the offering. These visits became cherished moments he eagerly anticipated, giving him a sense of connection and belonging. In this way, Ryan found an unconventional but deeply meaningful new family. What an incredible story! If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. See you in the next video.